Hey everybody, Matt here with Take Roads Less Traveled, and today on the Chevy Avalanche we are changing out the thermostat. This is a real easy job to do on these GMT 800 trucks, regardless of which one it is. Silverado, Sierra, which are the same thing really, Suburbans, all that mess. Anything with this 5.3 is really easy to change the thermostat on. We're going to get right into it and show you how you can get this done in really hardly any time at all. All right, so first things first is make sure your engine is cool. You do not want to be dealing with hot coolant that is, 210 degrees. Make sure your engine is nice and cool. And the first thing we're going to do is actually pull the cap off of the reservoir right here. So with the engine cool, I'm just going to pull that off, and we can just kind of set this right there. No big deal. Next up is draining the radiator. Now, if you have an earlier model, then you should have a petcock valve right down on the driver's side base of your radiator, right down there. You can see mine's already draining into a bucket. You can see all that deck's cool down in there. Mine is a 2006, so technically from the factory, mine did not have a petcock valve, but most aftermarket radiators, a replacement radiator, will have that petcock valve, and that is why I'm changing out my thermostat, because I changed out the radiator. So drain your coolant out. You're going to lose about 2 gallons when you do this, so make sure you have that coolant on hand to refill your system after you've drained it. All right, next up, now this is not a necessary step, but it's one that will give you a lot more space to work with, and that is we're going to remove the air intake tube. I've already loosened everything up, so I'm just going to I've undid my worm clamps. I'm just going to set this to the side. Now, the reason I wanted to do that is, like I said, that gives you so much more room to get right down to your thermostat, which is right there. So this is your water pump right here. All of this, you got your idler pulley right here, or I should say your tensioner pulley, sorry. Idler pulley's over here, tensioner pulley right here. These are designed for your heater core hoses and everything like that. This is your lower radiator hose, which goes into the thermostat housing. Now, you can get the thermostats all on their own, or you can get it with a new housing. I went ahead and got one with the new housing. So what we're going to do is take a pair of pliers, we're going to squeeze this pressure clamp, move it back to about right here, and then we can take this lower hose off, and that'll let a little bit more of the coolant drain out, but it shouldn't be too bad. And once we have that off, then we can go ahead and get this housing off. All right, got the lower hose off and got it out of the way right there. So now, to get this housing off, we need to take out 2 bolts. They're both 10 millimeter. You have one right here, and then directly across from it on the underside, one right there. So right there and right there, those 2 bolts you can see. Just gonna take those off with a 10 millimeter ratchet, and we'll be able to get the housing off. All right, so as you loosen the bolts up, this is gonna drop. You're gonna lose some coolant out of the water pump, and we're just gonna pull this the rest of the way out with those bolts out. And here is our thermostat and thermostat housing. Now you'll notice that if you actually look at the water pump and then you look at the housing, there's no gasket like you would normally find on a lot of thermostat housings. And that's because the gasket is actually just this O-ring that comes with the thermostat. And if you buy the whole kit, which is what I've done, you can see right there that I've gotten a Murray Plus. It's a Murray temperature control plus, and that is part number 524KT for this 2006 Avalanche. That is the housing, the thermostat, and it comes with that O-ring already there. That's actually all you have to have. You don't have to put any Permatex blue or anything like that when you reinstall it. They've made this a really, really simple setup. The one thing we are going to do is we're actually going to take some 1000 grit sandpaper, and we're just going to do a real light buff on that water pump surface just to make sure it's really clean, make sure any grime that might have gotten in there just isn't there at all when we put the new one on there. So we're just going to take a little bit of 1000 grit sandpaper and just do a real light brush over top of that surface to make sure that's really good and clean for the new setup. All right, so we've got our surface all cleaned up and prepped. We're just going to take the new pump. Going to get this top bolt started, just so it'll hold the pump. This is all aluminum, so you don't want to cross thread anything. All right, now we can get the bottom one started. Now your thermostat has a spring, and so it's not gonna sit flush right away. So, and that's where, when you tighten down these bolts, that's when you'll get it to sit flush. But when you do tighten them down, you only want to go to 15 foot-pounds. Again, trying to be careful because you don't want to cross thread anything here. And I can tell that's what she's wanting to do. There we go. So I'll just tighten this down. Again, like I said, you're going into aluminum, so you don't want to crank on it. You don't want to torque down one side and then do the other side. So I'm just going to get this until it pretty much is fully seated right there. I'll do the top one. Or the camera can fall. No big deal, right? There we go. Downside to not having a tripod or a spider pod when I'm filming this one. Should have grabbed it. All right. So those are both in. And again, you don't want to go over, you don't want to go too tight, because one, you might strip it, but two, you can snap the bolt. Almost, oh, and there goes the camera again. You guys are getting a nice look at the transmission cooler lines there. If I can get this to stay, it'd be great. Maybe. And I apologize. There we go. All right, there we go. So she's nice and tight. Again, sorry for the camera. Now we can take and hook this lower hose back up. We'll close the petcock valve on the driver's side. We'll get the air intake hooked back up. All real easy stuff, no big deal. And then we'll add our coolant. We'll add some coolant in, turn the engine on, and continue to add coolant until she's full. Real easy job, guys. And again, just check for leaks, make sure everything's good, that you're not losing any coolant or anything after any of this. And that is how you change out the thermostat on these GM 5.3 liter V8s, the GMT 800 specifically, especially with this 02 to 06 Avalanche. So like I said, real easy job, not difficult at all. And it's always good to change out your thermostat anytime you do any maintenance on the rest of your cooling system. So hope you guys enjoyed it, hope it helps, and always remember to take the roads less traveled.